Hey guys, and welcome. It's been a while, but we're going to get this ultimate patch 11.1 Warlock guide out, designed for anyone that is returning, taking a break, or just wants a really fast catch up for all the Warlock specs going into 11.1. So without any further delay, let's get into it. Starting with the class tree then. It comes as no surprise that the class tree is fairly restricted in what we can take. We do have a few choice options available to us, as you can see by the circles depicted beside me. Purple generally are like the quite common picks that are used to flesh out a spec. Fell Domination, top left, it allows you to summon a pet really quickly. Quite handy if you ever die or you just want a quick pet summon, because it also doesn't cost a shard. Burning Rush and Fiendish Stride, both very, very good for Warlock's utility, but not always used. The teal or light blue colours that I've selected are kind of like your Mythic Plus utility picks: Banish, Shadow Fury, and a cooldown reduction on Shadow Fury while extending its range. Again, you generally don't pick all of these at once. It really does depend on your comp setup or what you're doing. The red circles are your if you need extra defensives and variants of that. So the top one, if you cast Demonic Circle, it's going to give you a damage reduction for a short period of time, which when you're playing Diabolist, can be very, very useful because it gives you a damage reduction while you also get the benefit of Soulburn Demonic Circle, which is your movement speed and root immunity. Really, it was really good for Queen Ansarek if you were progging that last tier as a Warlock. Now, Soul Conduit, the very bottom talent that is highlighted green, can and occasionally is swapped out from time to time, but you do lose some damage for it. This is usually if you're doing a really, really hard encounter where you need multiple additional talents and the three just aren't going to cut it. So say, for instance, you need Burning Rush and Fiendish Stride, because remember, Fiendish Stride does reduce the damage you take from Burning Rush, but then you also potentially need to make sure that you've got Shadow Fury for protecting a tank, because the tank's, taking too much aggro or too much damage from lots of small adds and they need to be stopped. Queen Ansarek, again, as a good example, had mobs that would do this. If the adds weren't CC'd, the tank would just die to being hit loads if the adds didn't die fast enough. Alternatively, if you need the extra defensives but need the mobility provided by Burning Rush, you could take all of the red circles that we've highlighted as well as Burning Rush, and you'd have a spread of extra defensives and extra use. But all in all, generally, this is what the tree looks like. You'd point in Fell Domination, Burning Rush, and then maybe Shadow Fury if you're looking at Mythic Plus. Moving on to the specs then. So with the three specs, Affliction, Demonology, Destruction, where do they sit within the 11.1 meta as things currently stand from the video and projected going through the patch to make this video a bit more permanent for you guys, because it is supposed to be the one-stop master shop, as it were, for Warlocks. Generally speaking, Destruction is going to be your bread and butter for a lot of content. It is what I'd refer to as the chaser spec. It has utility, it has quality of life, it has all the bits and pieces you need within its toolkit, its hero trees, and everything else to be able to adapt to just about any situation and still perform well. Its numbers need a little bit of work, there's no way to get around it, but overall it is kind of going to be the spec you probably play the most. Following that, you have Affliction, which is a bit like your kind of, I'm a bit of a maverick, gonna do my own thing type of spec. You will see it represented in Mythic Plus, you will see it represented in Raid, but it's not necessarily going to be the common spec unless obviously number tuning does make it exceptionally strong. The reason for this is because Affliction is capable of doing incredible amounts of burst, but its quality of life isn't great, especially when it comes to M+ with Vile Taint. I'm sure if you go around and see a lot of other Warlock guides, it's a common complaint. Vile Taint is your AoE spread for Agony, for instance, but its cooldown is so long that you have to manually refresh your agonies before Vile Taint comes back off cooldown, otherwise you run the risk of them dropping off, which isn't great. And then you have Demonology, which is the, you know what guys, you do you, I'ma do me. And what I mean by that is the fact that Demonology's damage profile and the way it approaches problems generally means it has something for every occasion. It has incredible cleave burst, constantly has something to go in Mythic Plus. You can go, and you don't care what the tank does. The tank can pull 5, 3, 2, 1, 6, fucking whatever you want. And Demonology will have an answer for it for every pack through Dreadstalkers, Imps, Implosion, and the like. And it's also a bit of a single target merchant. If you can get Demonology to do what you want it to do, and just sit there and turret, it will always sim amazingly compared to the other Warlock specs. The problem is, it is very selfish in the way that it plays, because you lack the pet utility. You don't have Imp Dispel, you don't have Fell Hunter Kick and Silence. Although Fell Guards can kick/stun, it is coded as a stun first, which means that if you do try to kick a mob, it's just going to stand there, look at you dumb for 3 seconds, and then start casting again, which isn't going to help the group. A Fell Hunter, at least, will lock it and cause that pack or mob to move towards you. So as I said, you've got the Chaser, the Maverick, and then the I'ma do me guys. I'm going to have fun here. Let's break them down, and let's actually look at Affliction first and go into that. So Affliction is really fortunate in that both hero trees are comparable to each other in terms of overall damage, how they perform, with the key differences being Hellcaller is generally more mobile and doesn't really rely on its cooldowns as much, in that you pop everything in the first 30 seconds and then you run out of steam. Hellcaller will gradually catch up, whereas Soul Harvester is very much that, I have everything, I'm going to burst, have at it, but then if things don't die as they're supposed to, you might realize that you're running out of steam and, you know, drop down the meters a little. But all in all, it's pretty good. Now, I appreciate that the pictures on screen might look really daunting. Oh my god, there's all these circles. What am I doing? It's not that serious. The green circles are your single target to AoE options. Siphon Life to Absolute Corruption, Phantom Singularity to Vile Taint, Shadowbolt to Drain Soul, pick up the Soul Harvester increase to crit and haste at the bottom, and drop the Phantom Singularity does more damage, or everything hit by Phantom Singularity take more damage from you talent in exchange for that. Really straightforward. Literally, change your 3 nodes, remove 1 point, put it to the bottom of your tree. Job's good, and you're set. The red circles are the difference between Hellcaller and Soul Harvester. Because obviously Soul Harvester is primarily focused on like your Nightfall procs and increasing Shadowbolt damage, it increases Haunt, you're taking improved Haunt so that it applies a stack of Shadow Embrace for you, which you would apply through Shadowbolts or through Drain Soul, and it just generally makes quality of life a little bit easier on that front, while at the same time increasing your chance to proc Nightfalls through the other talent options. While I've been talking, it'll have cycled through Hellcaller single target, Hellcaller AoE, then into a Soul Harvester single target, just so you can see the differences for them. The AoE talents remain single target versus AoE regardless of the spec you play, which is why I'm really quick editing Aura, cutting into the video for a hot second. The Soul Harvester single target build has Absolute Corruption, whereas the Hellcaller single target has Siphon Life. This is dot maintenance ease of use, and although you could play Siphon Life for Hellcaller, generally speaking, it's better to play Absolute Corruption because that enables you to focus primarily on getting the rest of your damage out through the Shadow Bolts and everything else. So you don't need to worry about it. The purple circles, which I didn't mention at any point, weirdly enough, is a preference of choice. It puts damage through the crit element of your dot ticks or through Malefic Rapture damage. Now, the talent trees that you see up and that I have cycled through are the recommendations and are going to see you perform the best going forward. But if you're ever wondering why those purple circles are there, it allows you to have a little bit of choice and play around with those particular points available to you. Anyway, enjoy the rest of the video, and I'll see you later. Which is why I'm not then showing you a Soul Harvester AoE while we talk. The rotation for Affliction is really simple. It is a priority system, and basically you just don't let your dots drop. So once you've got all your dots applied, whether you're playing with Siphon Life or without, it's Agony, Wither, Haunt, UA. You've now got your 4 dots up, potentially 5 if you're rolling Siphon Life, and then you go, right, what do I do now? So if you're single target, you'll have Phantom Singularity to use as well, but that is it, really, in terms of your dots. It's then just make sure that you don't stack on charges, or not charges, stack on soul shards. Charges is destruction, we'll get to that later, and get ready to use your cooldowns. And using your cooldowns, straightforward, hit Soul Rot, Malevolence if you're playing Hellcaller, and then Dark Glare. Dark Glare has recently been buffed, so it now does a reasonable amount of damage, at long last. Gone are the days where it did less damage than a bloody trinket, but yeah, you don't need the history lesson. All in all, Affliction is really straightforward, and with this toolkit, you're now ready to go forward and conquer keys, or get to grips and raid as Affliction. Moving on to Demonology then. So, Demonology then, it's an interesting one. The actual tree itself doesn't really change a lot regardless of which hero tree you decide to use. The toolkit, the base toolkit for the spec, is the same regardless what it does. Technically, Soul Harvester has a slight edge in single target, but again, it's likely to be interchangeable. Now, all these circles that you can see on screen, again, probably making you go, bloody hell, Aura, what we doing here? But don't stress. So greens, again, these are the interchangeables from single target to AoE or to cleave. Don't worry about it. Purple is an interesting one, the purple circles. So one of the key issues we currently have with Demonology is the fact that Grimoire Felguard, which is a 2-minute cooldown, can potentially be killed. It's a bug, happens at the start of every expansion. It doesn't have the 90-odd% AoE reduction that our pets naturally get. So occasionally it can die off. What you can do instead is drop out of it and pick up Antoran Armaments, which increases the flat damage that your Felguard does and causes it to cleave a little. Now, obviously this choice is removed in large AoE because how strong Grimoire Felguard is. The other shift away with those 2 purple circles is the fact that with Grimoire Felguard, Demonology has a 1 minute, 2 minute, 1 minute, 2 minute, 1 minute, 2 minute type of burst cycle where your Tyrant, which is a minute cooldown, basically goes a big fish, little fish cardboard box. Because, for those of you that don't know, Tyrant is stronger the more demons you have out, and Grimoire Felguard counts for that as a demon. So you have your Grimoire Felguard out, you have a Tyrant, that is going to be your big Tyrant. A minute later, you don't have Grimoire Felguard, it's not off cooldown yet, but you can still Tyrant, and that's your mini Tyrant, as it were. If you don't like the idea of that 2-1-2-1-2-1-2-1 type playstyle, you can obviously remove Grimoire Felguard, go with Antoran Armaments, and your Tyrant will be the same regardless of what goes on. Now, the blue circles are highlighted because technically you're supposed to change them in a cleave or M+ setting. I personally don't, not very often. I prefer my Dreadstalkers to continue attacking faster and for them to have a higher amount of crit because of how much damage they're capable of doing. Having a proc chance to summon more imps or for Hand of Gul'dan to drop isn't as attractive to me personally. So when I play Demonology, I tend to keep the blue, but for the sake of you guys and to give you, the whole toolkit you need to be able to make these choices, I've put it in there. So again, while I've been talking, it will cycle through the various configurations, but we do have one special one to discuss, which is kind of the Maverick M+, I'm really gonna do me type playstyle, and, well, let's get into it. So, my affectionately named Maverick Demonology build. You can see I've removed all the other circles and just put red ones in place. These are the changes that are going to change this build from a very straightforward, standard, comfortable build to something that gives you a lot more control as a player over the AoE you do, but comes at a cost. So, for those of you that don't know, this build revolves around Guillotine, which gives your pet yet another, your big Felguard, yet another ability for you to manage. Now, it is mutually exclusive with Fellstorm or Demonic Strength, meaning that you cannot use the abilities at the same time, which means you have to be careful how you track them and how you monitor it. However, they are capable of doing an obscene amount of damage. So with this, you can basically chain a Demonic Strength into a Guillotine, into a Fellstorm, and watch as your Felguard just deletes packs. Or alternatively, you can rotate from pack to pack, so you always have something, especially in lower keys, so you're not necessarily waiting, and then Fellstorm goes off just as a pack's about to die, and you're like, oh, well, that was wasted. So it has its place, and the fact that your spells have a chance to summon Balscourge Bombers, which allows for more AoE splash damage and things like that. It's a nice build and it's fun to play with, but it can be very challenging if you're new to Warlock because you have to manage Demonic Strength, Fellstorm, and Guillotine all individually, tracking their cooldowns. But it's a rewarding playstyle, and I thought it worth an honourable mention before we move into Destruction. So without any further delay, let's get to the Chaser. So Destruction, or the Chaser spec as I call it, it's one of those specs where the talent tree looks simple and looks locked in until you start digging deeper. Now, I could highlight about half of this tree in various different circles and scare the ever-living crap out of everyone that's been watching the video so far. However, I'm not going to do that. Obviously, this is supposed to be a bit of a masterclass, a bit of a returning guide, so we're gonna keep it relatively basic, but I'll give you the information you need so that you can make these informed choices, or you can just go to Raider.io, copy and paste, and crack on. So, the green circles are your shift from raid single target to cleave. You'll drop Burning in Embers for Havoc or Mayhem. Now, Havoc or Mayhem, depending on what you're wanting from your cleave scenario, is going to either have more uptime in the form of Mayhem, because it can chain back to back to back to back, and on average will net you a higher Havoc uptime over the course of a fight without any significant difficulties. Havoc, on the other hand, puts that cleave damage in your control, which means that if there is a priority mob that's coming up and you've been assigned, right, you're going to kill it. In my case, I had that situation during the Mythic Ansarak Queen kill, where I was very much responsible for murdering a certain ad, and Havoc Shadowburn was a great way to deal with that. So I had to play that rather than playing Mayhem and, haphazard cleave anything that existed during the ad phases. Now, the purple circle is here because we need to discuss something. As things currently stand, on the 28th of February 2025, as part of 1.11.1, there is some situations around the fact that Rain of Fire might actually be better single target spender than Chaos Bolt. And obviously that is by taking the Inferno talent rather than the Cataclysm talent. So what Inferno does is it reduces the shard cost of Rain of Fire from 3 to 2 shards, and basically it's now Chaos Bolt. The problem with that is obviously there are elements where, them can be moved out, and it just generally has a lot of issues with it. But again, because I want to do you a full service and make this video what it's supposed to be, I am informing you here, which is why it is highlighted. It's not great, but, you know, as it is. So transitioning over into the Destro Cleave, you can see that Burn to Embers, or Burn to Ashes, sorry, is no longer selected, and I have instead selected Mayhem, and that would be a go-to. Now, you'll see that the hero tree changes as well. So Diabolist is by far superior in single target. I say by far superior, it is generally the strongest in single target due to the extra demons you can summon and how things roll. However, the moment you start getting into a cleave situation where you can benefit from having multiple withers out in order to feed your malevolence and basically the free damage that provides, Hellcaller starts pulling ahead. So Hellcaller is likely to actually be really, really strong during the 11.1 raid tier, Undermined, and doing the Gelagio encounters. Hellcaller is going to pull ahead because there's a lot of fights there where you can benefit from getting those withers out and enjoy that damage. Moving into the M plus build, we have the return of the colours. We have a set of selections. Now, there's a lot of controversy around this and how this is going to be played, because out of all the Warlock tier sets in 11.1, Destruction is the one that is by far the most affected in any given way. Both Affliction and Demonology are both very much fire and forget. Affliction, two pieces are pretty much irrelevant at this point. You hit a jackpot and you gain a benefit rotationally. Every DPS is the same in that regard. The 4 sets, however, where things get a bit different. Demonology just gets another dog. Basically, like, have at it, we have a 3rd Dreadstalker, it's going to be nice and pretty. Affliction has basically allows UA to cleave onto multiple targets. It's not drastic in any way, shape, or form. However, the 4 set for Destruction sends off Channel Demon Firebolts. So it gets a bit interesting in how things are going to play out. It also impacts our mastery, because it changes how our mastery interacts and actually makes mastery a little bit more beneficial for Destruction than prior. For those of you that aren't aware, stat priority in the past has generally been like, you know, you go haste crit, or maybe haste verse, like with crit and verse being like roughly on par in some situations. And that's it. Mastery's kind of just been a trash tier type stat for us for the longest time, which is one of the reasons why one of the purple circles, Mastery Incarnate, is there, because basically what that talent does is it means that our Chaos Bolt or our Rain of Fires will always benefit from the maximum amount of our mastery, which is further going to be amplified, which means that there are some talents in some ways that you can weave this in. You can pick up the extra mastery every time you spend a shard for a short period of time, rather than the increased fire damage if anything's in Rain of Fire. Then the new introduction of the talent for Channel Demon Fire, where you can either have it as a manual cast Channel Demon Fire, or you can have it so it randomly procs. Now, during the PTR, famously, it was bugged for Hellcaller. It was proccing like 25% of the time when it shouldn't be. It should have only been proccing 4% based on Wither. However, Incinerate proc it a lot. So, much higher chance for Incinerate to proc it, which means the Fire and Brimstone might see some use. Now, obviously, the tier set isn't out yet, so this is all pretty much speculation because the PTR wasn't great in terms of the Warlock capabilities for it, because it was bugged and having issues and things like that. So the M plus side of things is generally a little bit more open as things are standing. And obviously, as I say, I didn't want to swarm you with circles. So this image that you can see on screen at the moment is technically going to be, well, in all likelihood, it is going to be one of the most popular builds that you will see, minus a point or two here or there. And the points that I've mentioned are the ones that I've highlighted. They're the ones that are likely to be swapped out. Greens being swapped. You might see Channel Demon Fire picked up as the automatic version instead, and you might see the point in Improved Rain of Fire put somewhere else as we flex, maybe Fire and Brimstone, for instance. So with that, we've covered all the specs. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and it's not too long. I did try to do this as quickly as I could while still covering all the bases. If you do have any questions though, please do comment below and I will get back to you. And if you want me to expand on any of the specs and have like a deeper dive with some M+ footage or something in the coming weeks, please do let me know. In the meantime though, hope you're having a wonderful time in Undermine and you're all enjoying the drifting. Take care.